Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning. We've been going over the laws of charity, a late, beautiful material on how the community deals with such, and it's very, very interesting material and can be quite helpful, especially for B'nai Noach that are considering or trying to grow communities. These are just wonderful thoughts of proven ways that actually aid things in growing. So I look forward to hearing more. Let's just jump right in. Shalom, Rabbi Schwartz. You're live. We're going to turn the class over to you, and let's go from there.
Okay, Diane, thank you very much. Hello, everybody. And I'll share the screen and come over here to, let's see if I get the right document. Yes. There you go. I got two of them up there. I think I have to add this by the ZD. There it is. Okay. So we are in paragraph 18. And this is telling us the excess of a collection for a particular person or a particular need, if they have more than they needed, so the excess goes to the person that needed it that originally, even though it's over above what he needs, but it was collected for him, so it goes to him. And so the Shulchan Aruch, we're up to the Shulchan Aruch, and he's going to, I believe, repeat it. So I'm just going to read it out. Regarding a poor person for whom a collection to fulfill his needs has been made, which has exceeded his needs, the excess goes to him. If they made a general collection for the poor and they have an excess, they should put it aside for others in need. Now, not give it back to the donors. Similarly, the excess of a collection made for a particular captive should go to that captive. If they made a general collection for captives and they have an excess, they should save it for that purpose. The excess of a collection made for a particular deceased should go to the heirs of the deceased. The excess of a collection made for the needs of the dead should be used for needs of the same kind. So you put it in a fund for when there's poor people that die, you'll have the funds necessary to look after it. If the donors determine that there is a different need that is pressing and they want to redirect the funds, they have the right to do so. So they don't have the ability to reclaim the funds because they gave it to a charity, and that's a mitzvah. So they got you don't want to undo the mitzvah. So instead, though, they'll redirect the funds to another right. They have that right. Okay, I'm going to just increase this, make it a little easier for people to read it. Maybe and go up that high. If I go over here, yeah. Regarding another section of the Shulchan Aruch, regarding a poor person for whom a collection to fulfill his needs has been made. Did we just read that? Yeah, sorry. 253, the next paragraph. Regarding monies that were collected for the redemption of a captive who died before he could be redeemed. So you never got to use the money for which you intended. There are those who say that the monies go to his heirs, and there are others who say that the heirs do not acquire any rights to such funds. It is to this latter opinion that we lean currently, for we assume their intent was not to donate for this purpose. The same holds true when the captive has been defiled by the heathens before redemption could occur. I think that might be where they're trying to prevent somebody from suffering a certain fate, and it's already happened, so there's no point in paying that redemption fund. Rama adds, the same holds true if one promised to a maiden orphan marriage funds, but she dies. Then the heirs do not inherit these funds. So even though she was an orphan, but she made brothers and sisters would be her heirs, or even if there was no brothers and sisters, it would actually goes back up to her parents. She's an orphan, so to their siblings, go to those. And there was always someone who inherits. And here you couldn't use it for her. So, but in this case, we do not. They don't inherit. However, as long as she lives, they belong to the maiden orphan, and one must give them to her immediately without waiting for the marriage ceremony. If she subsequently dies, the monies are returned. See sources for some who disagree. So they were trying to marry her off, never worked. Okay, notes. It is really understandable why the excess of funds collected for a certain cause should be put aside for future needs of the same kind. The donors have relinquished their rights to the funds for the sake of the particular cause, and the funds will eventually be put to that very charitable use for which they were intended. It is perhaps less understandable why a single individual should be entitled to keep the excess that was collected on his behalf when, by definition, these funds are not being used for the purpose to which they were originally intended. They are not relieving a state of impoverishment because it's already handled. Nevertheless, we should recognize that this law appears consistent with the one enunciated in paragraph 13. There we found that one who is lacking but a single dinar from the minimum of 200 can accept and keep a gift of many times that value, provided that the whole gift was received in one transaction. It was suggested there, as I suggested there, that the reason the pauper could receive such an excessive gift is because the funds were coming from the special class of leket shichapeya and tithe of the poor, to which the pauper had a rightful claim. So that was, I think, this is all based on my original interpretation of those issues, which I've now revised, and so we still have this issue that why, if you collected funds, we have this idea that if you collect funds, so they can't be used for the purpose other than what they were collected. So I use that to explain why, for example, that a traveler, for example, who's in town, so he can collect from one fund, but not from the weekly fund or the nightly fund, because that was for the poor of that city and not for him, and other situations like that. So it has to go for the people for whom you intended it. So here, I intended to relieve this guy's impoverishment, and now his impoverishment has been relieved. He needed $100, and they collected 120. So the extra 20, what are we going to do? So he's saying give it to him, but he doesn't need it. So if it was that special class, it was an annual right. If it went into the and just a fund for that's available to the poor, so then we established that any poor person can come and collect it. And we don't examine if they're poor. It's up to them to, I guess, self govern. Yeah. However, it is clear that Rambam here is not discussing this special class of leket shichapeya and tithe of the poor. Again, the leket is the gleanings, the shich is the forgetting of the sheaf, and the pay is the corner of the field. And then there was the tithe of the poor, the 10%, every third and sixth year. The reference here is to a special collection for the specific purpose of relieving the day machsoro, that's the phrase in the Hebrew, which was the general needs of a particular person, the lack that he had. The presentation seems to include a situation where there are excess funds after a distribution has already been made that effectively has nullified the state of impoverishment. So you needed $100, you collected 120, you gave him the 100, got a 20 of those left over. What do you do? Give it to him. Why then should the excess funds be transferred to a person who no longer qualifies for charity? Similarly, why do the excess of funds collected for the burial needs for a particular deceased go to the heirs who may never have never qualified for charity? They didn't need anything. It's this that guy. He doesn't. In other words, these heirs could be not even his children. It could be his brothers or or his uncles, depending on the family situation. But we say give it to the heirs because it was collected for him, so it becomes part of his estate, and just distribute the estate to wherever it goes. And the question is, well, why? So the answer may be rooted in the principle presented at the beginning of chapter 8. Rambam explained there that charity funds fall under the classification of vows. Accordingly, since these funds have been vowed to a particular person, the vow must be completed regardless of any changes in the circumstances that motivated the vow in the first place. The duty to fulfill a vow continues even when compliance can only be approximated, such as when only the heirs remain with whom to complete the vow. So that's like you're grappling with this. So it's not just charity; it's a vow, and you have to keep your word. And so if you say I'm going to give it to this guy, so even though he no longer needs it, but you said I'm going to give it to this guy, and you made a vow to give it, so then it has to go to that guy. That's how I read that. Paragraph 19. Should a poor person donate a pruta to tamchu or kupa, it is accepted. So if a poor person donates a pruta to tamchu or kupa, in other words, a pruta is the smallest coin available, a penny, whatever the smallest coin. It was like almost worthless, even in the times of the Talmud. So, but it had value, it had a value. So it was considered currency, and so you can accomplish something with that. And so he donates a pruta, so we accept it. If he does not donate, we do not obligate him to do so, even though we'll see the notes. If they gave him new clothes and he returned his old tatters, they are accepted. If he does not return them, we do not obligate him to do so. So this guy's the worst of the worst, and he's trying to maintain his dignity, so we accept it, but we don't insist on it. So on this, the Shulchan Aruch wrote, should a poor person give a small coin to charity, we accept it from him. So he's already modernizing it, doesn't deal with a pruta, it's a small coin. However, if he does not give, we do not obligate him to give. If when we gave him new clothes, he returned the old ones, we accept them from him. If he does not return them, we do not obligate him to do so. So notes. This is based on a Tosefta in Peah chapter 4. I didn't have the text, so that's why I didn't bring it down. But I probably could find it now in Safaria, but I didn't yet. But it's going to say more or less the same thing. A pruta, and I'll explain, a pruta was the smallest coin in tender during Talmudic times. We might wonder why Rambam bothered to specify a pruta rather than just referring to any size donation. The specific reference to Tamchi and Kupa, the soup kitchen and the weekly fund, rather than any charitable cause, is also curious. Why are you pointing that out? Just say, if a pauper wants to give a small amount, whatever it is, you take it. We might further wonder why, and this is another example of how I hold the Rambam words almost sacrosanct. He's very, very careful about what he says. So if he said one thing and not another, then he could have said, I'm asking why. Is there any further message hidden in his words? We might further wonder why Rambam felt it at all necessary to mention that we accept donations from the poor, since he's already stated in paragraph 5 of chapter 7 that even a pauper is obligated to give charity. So of course you would accept it from him. Here you could, I understand you could tell me that he doesn't have to give, or you're not going to force him to give, but he already said this. Indeed, we must wonder at the contradiction that follows when Rambam says that we do not demand a donation of the pauper. Why don't we demand it? If he is obligated by the commandment, let's make sure he keeps the commandment. By the way, this isn't so outlandish as it may seem. We could have a duty to give him charity because he has to give charity. So that's one of his needs, is the ability to have funds to give away. And just like if he doesn't have tzitzis or tefillin or matzah for Pesach, we're obligated to give him funds so that he can avail himself of those mitzvahs. That's part of what he needs. So the Shach commentary, the Shach is Actually, it's interesting. We just call it shach, but it's actually a short form. It stands for sifsei chachamim, which are the lips of the wise, and it's a commentary, one of the primary commentaries on Shulchan Aruch. And he seeks to resolve this contradiction by explaining that the pauper's obligation to give charity only exists when he has enough to sustain himself. The Shach's answer suggests that the case here refers to a pauper who does not have enough to eat and is therefore not obligated to donate. However, since such a state constitutes life endangerment, it hardly seems necessary for Rambam to caution that the commandment does not apply. You don't have to tell me every time, if somebody is in dire need that they don't have to do this. That's like a standing statement. So why did he bother putting it in here? Also, the fact that I'm I don't know if I got this question from the Shach. I think I would have picked it up myself, but you see that the Shach, who's very astute, picked it up too. It shows just that I'm on the right track with the question. A different resolution to this contradiction may be proposed if we understand the obligation in chapter 7 to be subject to the annual minimum of 1/3 of a shekel. Once this minimum is met, the commandment no longer demands a donation, although additional donations would continue to constitute a performance of the commandment. So if you'll recall back then, I pointed out that there was a minimum performance of the mitzvah of charity, which was 1/3 of a shekel a year. Now, just to give you a perspective on that, there was another mitzvah on all of Israel that we keep to this day, to give a half shekel at least once or twice a year to the general fund. Originally went to the temple fund. So we continue to do that. So a half a shekel is more than 1/3 of a shekel. And and you would have had to make him available to do that too. So let's say he gave the 1/3 of the shekel, however he got it, whether from us or from his own funds, he gave it. Now we're talking about he has another penny to contribute. What do you do then? Normally we say give 10% of what it's a reasonable or like, let's say a normal, a dignified approach to give 10% of what you have to charity. But for a pauper, maybe we're saying that no, after he gives the minimum 1/3, let's not. It's no longer a case of dignity. So I'm saying, since the pauper may have already donated the sum or may intend to give it in the future, and since there's no pauper here from whom he is turning away or hardening his heart, kupa and tamchui are collected by the treasurers, not directly by paupers. There's no reason to demand that he give. I think I should just put in here I forget what that's called, but it's okay. So there was two things. Remember when we started, we said there was a positive mitzvah to give charity, but there's also a negative commandment not to withhold, not to harden your heart, not to turn away. And I analyzed at that time how far that extended. Was it only if somebody directly asked you that you're not allowed to say no? Was it if you saw somebody needed and you turned away, you didn't try to find out if he really needed your help, or just you just never made it available, so I think there was 3 stages. But at any rate, maybe you'd say that, but since he gave the 1/3 and there's no pauper here in front of us that he's turning away, so there's no reason to demand that he give. On the other hand, if a pauper does offer a donation of a pruta, it may be accepted. The prohibition stated in chapter 7, paragraph 11, not to accept a donation from one who can't afford it, would not be of concern, since a pruta is a negligible amount and its donation would always be affordable. That's what I assume. So I'm just trying to answer Rambam why he why he dealt with a pruta, and that would be because it's so small that nobody cares. I mean, it does have value, but it's hardly going to make a difference in anybody's life. And so, if he wants to give it, he can. Um, and But we actually had a prohibition not to accept a donation from someone who you knew couldn't afford it, and wanted to give it because he felt embarrassed, whatever. So we were forbidden to let him do it. So all that comes into play. So this is coming back to where we started, and we're going to do even more of that in the next chapter. And we got 10 minutes to go. So I have prepared the next chapter, and I just got to figure out which one of these tabs it is. Not this one. I think it's this one. Okay. So this is chapter 10, the last chapter. And paragraph 1 says, we are obligated to be scrupulous in our observance of the commandment to give charity, more so than all the other positive commandments. For charity is a sign of the righteousness of the offspring of Avram, our forefather, as is written, for I know him that he will command his children to do righteousness, justice and righteousness. Indeed, the throne of Israel is only established, and the true faith only stands on righteousness, as it is written, in righteousness shall you be established. Furthermore, Israel is not redeemed except through acts of charity, as it is written, Zion shall be redeemed through justice and her inhabitants through righteousness. So the onus is on us that we have to live up to a very high standard. Otherwise, we're never going to qualify. And so we have to be scrupulous, because that's God's whole plan is that there'll be Israel will be redeemed, the Messiah will come, it'll be good for everybody, etc. We have to be in the lead. We have to play a lead role. And that part of that is just being scrupulous. In other words, you have to be scrupulous in every observance of the commandments. God said to do something. You'll say, well, I'll get to it tomorrow. You have to be careful to do what he instructed, especially knowing how much it's going to help you, really. But here he wants to emphasize that more so than all the other positive commandments. So, of course, you have to be scrupulous in every mitzvah, but more so than all the other. And there's always a range of effort that one can apply to anything you intend to do, want to do, whatever. And so he's starting this chapter off by saying that your effort should be top notch. Is this? Oh, wait a minute. Oh. Where's that? What happened? I'm looking for something. Huh. Can't find it. Okay. All right. So this comes from two Talmuds. One in Yevomis, which deals with Yevoma is a woman whose husband died, leaving childless. He didn't have children, and so his brother has a special mitzvah to marry her and raise a name for his dead brother, or perform another ritual called chalitza. And then there's also Sanhedrin, which is the laws of the court. And it says over there in both places, this nation is distinguished by three characteristics, talking about Israel. They are merciful, bashful, and benevolent. Merciful, for it is written, and show thee mercy and have compassion on thee and multiply thee, that's in Dvorim, in Deuteronomy. Bashful, for it is written that his fear may be up before you. So if you're afraid, I guess that makes you bashful. And benevolent, for it is written that he may command his children and his household, etc. That's Genesis 18:19, which is the verse that Rambam quoted up here. Only he who cultivates these three characteristics is fit to join this nation. And then there's another third Talmudic source in Shabbat, Ula said, Jerusalem shall be redeemed only by righteousness, as it is written, Zion shall be redeemed with judgment, and her converts with righteousness, Isaiah 127, which is what Rambam quoted. So I had to bring all those down. And on this, I comment, I couldn't find a Shulchan Aruch, I guess. So, which is interesting, is Rambam exhorts. This is not a law. This is just an inspirational talk, motivational speech. Be very careful. The law's already been stated. The instructions already stated. You know what you got to do, how to do it, so on. So Shulchan Aruch doesn't make this comment. The same Hebrew word I'm pointing out as translated as both charity and righteousness. In other words, it may not be apparently obvious that why do we have to be scrupulous? It says he will command himself to do righteousness. Well, the word for righteousness is tzedakah, and that also means charity. So it's a play on words, or if you like, it's the same word. It just translated there. They felt it translated righteousness, but it includes charity as well. The other comment I have here is at the beginning of his discourse on charity in chapter 7, Rambam explained that while the minimum duty is to give 1/3 of a shekel each year, the optimum performance of the commandment requires a donation of up to 1/5 of annual income. At the beginning of this final chapter on the subject, Rambam exhorts us to perform the commandment at its optimum level, more enthusiastically than any other commandment, because of the stamp it places on our national character. Rambam continues in this vein in the next paragraph with an exhortation on an individual level. So this was on the national level. So now he says, never will a man be impoverished because of charitable donations, nor will any evil or damage befall him as a result of giving charity. For it is written, the act of charity will establish peace. Verse in Isaiah. Whoever shows mercy, mercy is shown to him, as it is written, he will give you the attribute of mercy and show mercy to you and multiply you. That's from Deuteronomy. On the other hand, one who demonstrates hard-heartedness, it is not merciful. There is reason to suspect his lineage, for hard-heartedness is only found among idol worshippers. As it is written, they are hard-hearted and show no mercy. All of Israel and those connected to them are like brothers, as is written, you are children to God your Lord. If a brother does not show mercy for a brother, then who will show him mercy? To whom shall the poor of Israel lift up their eyes? Shall it be to the idol worshippers who hate them and chase after them? Behold, their eyes are only directed toward their brothers. So quite eloquent. And I guess this should be U, capital Y. And why is this? No. Yeah. Okay. So this is a Talmud in Tanis, and that deals with fast days. And it says, we're going to read this next time. Any questions?
No, I'm okay.
That's right.
No, I'm good, Rabbi. I did. Can you scroll back up just a little bit to the previous page there? And I just want to record one of the verses that you wrote down there.
Yeah, just a minute. This one?
Just up. Up a little more.
Which one? Yeah.
The Deuteronomy 13:18.
Uh-huh. I can send you this document.
Please do.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. I just for recap purposes, when it comes to charity, the whole purpose is to make sure it goes to what it's intended for.
Once you Well, there's several levels, but when they give it to a particular fund, then they have to make sure it goes to what it was intended. But we saw that they could reallocate it if you don't need it for that anymore. They could reallocate it, but they can't take it back. That's the main
In
thing.
unusual circumstances, yeah, they've got to cope with it in one way or another. And
They can't take it back because the because of the vow element of it.
I like that paragraph there on where it says hard-heartedness is not merciful. That's something big there. There is a reason to suspect his lineage for hard-heartedness is only found among idol worshippers, as it is written. They are hard-hearted and show no mercy, from Jeremiah 3:42. That's wow.
I should show this to somebody else. So I had a conversation with a guy on Quora today. Don't mean to pick on him, but I was trying to get. He actually, I think he's a pastor, or he actually teaches. He wrote a very nice, long, comment on. He was sitting in the car and he was just thinking about God and how it made him feel good and so on. He waxed eloquent. And I said, "Okay, very nice, very nice." I think of the. But what behavior does that bring up? What are you doing about it? And he just skirted the issue. He just and finally he went down to the thing that just it's just the grace. It's there's nothing I have to do. It's just whatever will come to my mind. I guess that's one of the big differences between um, the
Christianity, yeah, it's sold like liposuction surgery. Yeah, all the benefit with the none of the effort, and yet if you look at liposuction surgery, the majority of people have massive weight gains after they have the removal. Because there's no character change, and even still, the majority of the best ministers, past Christian ministers, always teach character development and integrity, and that's because the grace message doesn't it's like liposuction, just sucks it right out and doesn't change the bad habits that got you in there in the first place.
Right. So I got to go back at him and see if maybe he can he talks more. I think they'll acknowledge more behaviors to avoid, like their homosexuality and abortions, so that they're more willing to state that's a behavior. Those are negatives, maybe, right? They'll acknowledge those mitzvahs, behaviors not to do, as opposed to the behaviors to do. Is that right?
Well, they got to keep some sense of believability, right? So, they just use the paintbrush and color in some ethics, and they think it smooths over the lies. Sadly,
I'm not trying to put anybody down. I'm trying to just get them to.
Yeah, I'm just about to start a series on deprogramming Christianity, and so I've been doing a ton of research for it. The point being, right back to the beginning, and just the mind frame and the way it thinks. It's there's so many. My first episode is going to be called Mind Traps, and yeah, they speak in total abstraction to open in abstractions, Rabbi, or abstractions work like a Rorschach test. If you've ever seen a Rorschach ink blot test, which is used and helps with psychological diagnosis, right? The point being, with abstractions, it opens a world of subjectivity, and they can then do their hokey pokey dance, saying, I didn't say that, I meant this. And it goes into the subjective, how you heard it and what I really implied. But when they talk in abstractions, it's their way of living in a round room, so they don't get cornered and can continue talking out of both sides of their mouth. Yeah. I got some really neat stuff lined up of the way they polarize and the way mind traps are placed. And when mind traps are placed, it just sadly people get left with low self-esteem, and it's due to mind traps. And
I think we got to develop some suggestions that why don't you try this behavior that's not so hard to implement it. So ease them into it to suggest, because like I got to go back to this guy and see if he'll at least admit that there's behaviors he stays away from. So okay, so then if you follow that, because it says that behavior not to do, so then here's a behavior it says to do. Why don't you try that? See if I can get somewhere like that.
I'm sure, yeah, you've got a wise approach at it, but
Right.
yeah, that's a good lesson for tonight, Rabbi. So yeah, we're not on tomorrow or Tuesday, but we will be
Right.
back Wednesday.
Right.
Rabbi, you're okay for Wednesday?
Yes.
So Ronald, that'll be Thursday morning in Australia if you're available. We
Yeah, I
won't be
might.
here.
It depends on outreach now, how long our Zoom goes for. But I try to get in when I can. Some days I can, most times I can't,
We're always glad when
because we
when you
overrun with
visit.
questions coming in. Yeah.
Well, I always open the Zoom a half hour early, so it's always nice to chit chat with you beforehand and hear what's going on around the world, the other side of the planet. Yeah, so on that note, we're going to sign out of our Zoom Daily for today. We will be back Wednesday with more Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz, continuing with his material on the laws of charity, which I find is rooted in true Torah, and I love how he's explaining it from the wisest sources they have, and reading them to us. It just it brings a lot of clarity and helps clear muddy water and give us direction forward for sure. So until Wednesday, we're going to sign out for now. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.